psychoactive perhaps, was that the
Okay.
language they use?
Yeah,
If you take a lot of it, it does have a psychoactive value to it,
Okay.
just like it has a, you take a lot of it, it has a partial agonist effect like Suboxone.
Right.
That's why the Suboxone doctors are mad,
Well,
you know.
Well, I've seen that and a few other things on the side of the road. Usually, I guess.
I don't want kids looking.
Some
at
wrong.
the-
I'm John,
I'm
by the way.
Pitbull.
John Schindler.
And, you know, that is a controlled substance. It's like methadone, you get for morphine, other things. Use something like a lesser effect, so it keeps them off the hard stuff. But if people overdose on
Right.
it, they have to make sure they can get naloxone. I think now.
Yeah, Narcan,
Narcan, yeah, naloxone, same thing.
I actually got that bill passed in Virginia, the Narcan bill.
I did a lot of work with the military and anesthesiologists, so we used to use naloxone. Because the drug of choice for war injuries was morphine,
Opiate.
Demerol.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to make sure that we could, you know, get someone.
I didn't
you know,
see this until after, because I
Okay.
had left.
Yeah.
work
tested
already,
on, and,
but
you know,
Laura
they
asked if she could
Be
screen share.
using other stuff off
I was
hours.
gonna say, I
And then
can,
you give them.
I already have
gloves
gloves to screen
that's
share, I
supposed to
just
produce
figured I
a
could
certain
tell
effect.
her. That might be easier, I mean, does it matter?
All of a sudden, someone says, well, you know, the respiration is dropping, things are going, it's okay, just give them naloxone.
Okay, yeah,
We'll have to
so
counsel
anyway,
that soldier.
Right.
Okay,
Something's going on, you know? And
perfect, yeah, cause I have,
it was, you know, even in the back of
I
the
can
old
do
days.
this right now.
One of the people in this town, you know, who definitely said, we will never have a recreational place. And we'll have grow facilities, we have 3. That's fine, that's agriculture, and as long as you don't distribute from Bellingham, you can take it to like, they take it from Bellingham to Franklin Dispensary.
Right.
They have to go, they take it somewhere like
Rickham?
Leominster or Westford.
Rickham?
And
No,
then,
it's for export out of the county, basically. out of the
Yeah,
town.
yeah. but, we passed, the thing, and I remember years ago, Cheryl Sabaro, which is our MHAB attorney and now director of the MHP. This had come up when we had Marilyn, who was a tobacco control agent, you know, that we put in any synthetics, whether they're organically derived or inorganically derived, because there's all this
We hate
mystery
synthetic.
part of,
We hate
you know, if they have any,
China
psychoactive capabilities. Can't be sold in Bellingham, you know, so.
Think a lot of stuff on some policy.
Oh, hey, I'm gonna leave one of these books with y'all, but I gotta take 2 with me,
Yeah.
but this is,
He's
people,
gonna make us stop you.
yeah, well, look at it, I mean, people say we don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff. there. We're not gonna
We don't know
digest
what
all-
I know, but
I'm telling you, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right, that's what I was telling him, I was like,
I
that's
told
what
you,
I
I see this on TV and it's like, are you kidding me? And this is probably from 5 years ago, as far as I know, we do smuggling. I have no idea what it was, you know, other than it was how to get the smuggling. And they had it and I said, I know that name and I pulled my
Yeah.
paperwork and that.
it could have been an old file, but what they did, see, back in 2017, the FDA started their crap, and the reason they're so pissed off, because in 2016, the DEA was gonna ban it, was gonna schedule it. And in the first time in the history of the DEA, they reversed a scheduling ban.
Right.
Because
I didn't talk to her-
125,000
I didn't talk to her
Congress,
after,
And Congressman
you
and
told me
senators
what happened,
calling up
so-
the DEA. This stuff, man,
That's-
what you talking about?
yeah.
So
So I have
she's
a
been a
quick
run
question.
gun battle.
she's got enough stuff she's dealing with.
Rhode Island, I mean, they have a central board of health, I don't know if that has any effect on these things, but they're a complete ban, right?
Well, they did that in 26. It has not been a ban since 2016,
Okay.
or 2017,
Then-
since the DEA was threatened to
Vermont, I
ban it.
thought it was New Hampshire, it's Vermont.
Yeah. it's
But when they
Vermont.
say states with known local bans, what percentage? Like, we have 2 towns,
Well,
two
this,
towns or cities.
yeah, there's
that have
probably
banned.
2 or 3 in Massachusetts, there's
Right, right.
4 or 5 in Mississippi.
Okay.
Louisiana, the sheriffs
All
run
right.
Louisiana.
Right, right.
So that, you know, it's legal in the state, it's
Right.
not banned in the state, but they're allowing the sheriffs to go to their,
Right.
what do they call them down there,
Local, yeah,
parishes.
parish.
The parishes, you know, that's like 5, 6 counties put together.
Right, right.
And that's right.
I think, Laura, can you hear us okay?
I can. Can
So
you hear
that's
me all
why I
right?
used to say, like, when we
Yeah,
had people coming.
yeah, we're about to start in a couple minutes, I was just about to say, I have the, presentation pulled up and I figured I could click through it for you.
Oh, that's great. I'll just say next when I'm ready for the
Oh, you
next.
get it.
Perfect,
I have a lot of
sounds good,
background.
all right, you just, I'll
Soldiers.
just click through and, I'll let you know when we're ready to start, okay?
That sounds great.
Has
Perfect.
properties that cause brain issues.
Hey, Rick, how you
It
doing?
is not
Good, how are you?
harmless,
Very good.
you know. Medically, I'll say, whatever. You can get,
Use anything, it ain't harmless,
Right.
so.
you know, but the thing was, the next person that would stand up, it was all the different clergies for one reason. Thou shalt not worship more than one God. When people take alcohol or drugs,
I had a lot of
worshiping
this.
another God.
That's why they call it spirits and not.
So I used to say, like, well, we got 5 people in town meeting, out of whatever it was, usually the May meeting is 300.
Right.
So I said, oh, we got 5 against it, and usually it never passed, it never got, it needed a 2/3. Or even if it needed a 50-50, we never got to 50-50.
So I screwed that up.
Probably 60,
No, I know,
40,
I know where your
or
head's at though.
60.
Yeah, no,
It's
I screwed it up.
5:45.
It didn't say
However,
that
in
in
this
when
town,
she first
when they
started.
passed the,
Oh,
It
okay.
just
I
said
call the illegal commission. in dispensaries.
2004.
Bunch of
Didn't say
fires,
before
right?
or after.
Lawyer for them,
So
the guy that runs them, they're like,
Oh, you gotta add.
they're the most
Yeah.
disrespectful group in government.
I was thinking about
But
it.
that
and I said,
said,
you know something, I think I screwed that up.
Bellingham went 50,
I'm glad we caught that.
So
like
like after
that.
2004.
Yes.
Well,
but
Okay.
we have 1 in Franklin, we have 2 in Blackstone.
yeah.
And everybody said, we're losing all this money. I said, we're not getting drug money. Second of all, when you think about it, if you put another one here, the 2 in Blackstone, the 1 in Franklin, you're gonna share those receipts. So if they're making 400, it's gonna be split another third or quarter, 25% of it. We get
Good
100.
job.
Oh, my
I've been
God.
talking to these guys for a while.
Whatever.
Okay, what do you mean?
Yeah, Yeah, do you want to,
7 o'clock, like.
yeah, it's 7 o'clock, we can get this thing
All
rolling.
right, on the road, yeah.
Okay. Got my, thing, that's all you. Okay, being 7 o'clock, I'd love to open the meeting for the Bellingham Board of Health. February, let's see, February 18th, 2025, myself, Ben 40, Chair, Vice Chair Rick Gilberti, Member Richard Martinelli, Agent Dylan Labonte, and Minutes Clerk Laura Renaud. First order of business is the minutes from February 4th, 2025.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes, but Laura, can you change? I know I emailed you and I said to put in the word before 2004. It should be after 2004. So I'd like to,
As amended.
as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say so carried.
Did you understand that, Laura?
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
So next order is the informational hearing for the American Creighton Foundation.
Yeah. So I have a presentation up here. Laura is in the group called, not our Laura, but their Laura.
Their Laura.
I know, a bit
A little
confusing.
So I just wanted to clarify. So,
Okay.
we also have John here and a couple other members, Jen, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
My name is Dan.
Dan over here.
Okay.
So, we have another few couple members, but, yeah, I don't know really how you guys want to do it. I don't know if Laura wants to take off and just go with the,
Yeah,
Like
let
a
Laura
through or-
kick it off and I'll intercede periodically.
perfect. All right.
Yep, I think we have a plan. This is the first time we've done it like half virtual, half in person. So we apologize if we, if I missed the verbal cues and things. So please feel free to interrupt me if you have a question as I go along. And so that there's, not any issues there. You know what? You've got you do not have the right PowerPoint up. This is
don't?
not the condensed one. Let me send you the condensed one that I'm going to be talking about tonight. I'm like, no, that's not the right one. So hold on.
Here, let me get into,
Let me get-
yeah, I know, right? Here, I want to stop sharing before I log into my,
Yeah.
email for everyone to see.
Okay, well, we don't care.
and
You
I'm
guys
trying to
don't
get-
care, but I don't want it to be recorded for the town to see. I don't need to see that.
Hold on, I'm trying to see if I can get my email up here.
I know. More like everyone's gonna be, more like we're gonna have to deal with another hack.
Okay, get flush.
Hold on, I'm not getting to mine either. Oh, goodness. Why is this not where? Oh, I know what I have to do. Hold on. I had my second monitor plugged in. One sec.
Technical difficulty.
Okay, here we go.
Dylan, you were doing so good.
I know. I was rocking and rolling and everything.
I'm like, we're gonna be here a long time if that's the one we're sending.
I appreciate you catching it.
Yeah,
All
hold
right.
on one
I'm
second.
logged in, so whenever you shoot it over, I'll be able to pull it right
So
up.
Yeah, I'm
when
getting
we
there.
have a Paper, we can say this way.
You know where this process is with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
They, right now, that's a great question. They keep waffling back and forth with the state legislator. And we think it's best that these localities start regulating at the local level, like we're trying to encourage you folks to do, regulate it and not wait on the state. Because every time we get close to a good regulation, somebody blows it up. So Massachusetts is one of those states where may not happen this year, but we're active in 40 states right now. We got the Kratom Consumer Protection Act passed in 13 states. So yeah, they talk about it every year. You know, they have the discussion, but it's policy. It's politicians. This is what they do.
The packet is the long version,
It's long, but I'll get that.
so,
We've waited.
yeah,
on
I
the
think,
state
I think she's gonna get the.
Oh,
The short
look,
Yeah, it should be, it says it just sent, so you should be getting it any second.
all politics are local.
We don't wanna be first sometimes, but we don't wanna be like, wait till everybody
Oh,
else
the
does.
Madison.
Well, the state does.
Stuff. Okay.
I'm gonna be number one.
Right, well, not to mention, I like to be proactive, and not reactive, so.
Are there any other cities and towns in Massachusetts that have passed?
They've had several municipalities that have actually banned it, which is bad policy, it's terrible. And that's mainly because they get all their information from misinformation sources. And they don't consider the science and the data and what we bring to you. You know, for example, they might spend 6 months discussing something before we even brought it into the conversation. And when we show up, we get 2 minutes to explain why this is bad policy. And by then it's too late. But anytime we get to demonstrate the evidence, we always come out on top.
Do you know which cities and towns have banned it in Massachusetts?
Lowell and Chelmsford.
Lowell and Chelmsford?
There's Drake and
Drake
Morgan
Cup
there.
is
We're
Thursday
going to the
night.
meeting on Thursday for Drake.
Right.
Okay, yeah, it's, Lowell started it, and now it's all the
You're gonna try to
surrounding,
get there.
it's
Right.
kind of surrounding communities are adapting to legislation as well.
Can I just point out that the one in Lowell, it was all based on a, case of a 35-year-old man who took it in Florida. And it's the mother who brought it to Mass and is on this crusade now to ban it because her 35-year-old son died from a heart attack that showed on the toxicology report, and we'll get into why the toxicology report showed this sometimes, but, he had kratom in his systems. That's what she's based it on, and that's where it started in Lowell. And then they just went to the next town, so they're on a crusade to get it banned statewide.
Are there any cities and towns in Massachusetts that have approved it?
Regulations, like get a.
Yeah, with
protection.
the regulation you put into our packet,
That, I don't think so. If I knew, I could say it, but I don't think so.
okay?
We did this is the last 6 months this has come up like this, you know, but it's new to us to have to do this like this.
Normally it's a state and the statewide, it's a regulation that gets passed. And I really do feel that if you guys are the first municipality to pass that, that's just, you're the way showers for the state.
Yeah.
Were you able to get the PowerPoint? It says it's sent. I'm just curious.
The KCP Act that was mentioned, KCPA Act that was mentioned was recently passed in Georgia earlier this year.
Well, that's a state, but he's talking
Yeah.
locality.
Right, but
I mean, Virginia, we passed ours 2 years ago. We didn't have a problem since then, so, other than the health department's not like.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to pull it up.
Oh, good. You got it then. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it and all right, start slideshow.
Are there any studies that show, people using the substance and also other substances? What are the health implications?
Of
Yes.
So I'm doing Khartoum and I'm also doing liquor.
Yes, right.
I'm also doing marijuana. I'm also doing,
You have that in front of you.
but
Yeah,
what do the studies say?
But this one says that people are pivoting from one pill kills illegal stuff.
No, I understand that
Okay.
they're pivoting to cartoons.
The
I'm
most-
saying, what happens when they do both?
Like when
What
they
are the
use it-
studies
Right, so
showing
there,
then?
there's a whole website, I don't have it, normally I come much more prepared with stuff, there was a little incident today, which I will share when I get to speak. But there's a whole website with over 214 interactions, so people can be well informed if they look.
Is that the AKA website?
It's actually not.
Oh, okay.
This one.
It's just like anything else. I mean, you know, you
Yeah, I
have
can
to
get you the site right
consumer be-
now.
consumer
I'm-
beware of, you know, what you're taking into your system, and, you know, it's like anything, but a lot of common sense is there as well too.
Correct,
Are you
consumer.
talking drug interactions?
Yes.
Yeah.
In that book, there are probably some, I can't tell you what page you go to. They do toxicology report when there's like kratom related death, they call them.
Yeah,
And what they typically find out that an individual is a probably drug use situation. So, you know, the final verdict, you know, what drugs have bad interactions, they do, you know, they've concluded pregnant women shouldn't consume it. They warn against that. But because most of the clinical trials have been done with animal studies, and we're just now entering the human trial study phase right now. John
Yes.
Hopkins is doing them.
do you have any information on, the cuts by Trump? Through
Yes.
the, FDA, through the Health and Human Services? Are they gonna affect any of these studies that have been going on for the last year and a half to 2 years?
I can answer two things to that. Number one, they're cutting funding, as you've been recently witnessing across the board. They're whacking science funding, studies funding, universities funding for new drugs, existing drugs. But here's an interesting caveat that it's not publicly known yet. But President Trump went to HHS and said, look, we want to cut Medicaid. We want to cut reimbursement for FDA drugs such as methadone and Suboxone. However, we want you to look into the use of using kratom, which is not an FDA approved drug, which means they don't have to reimburse for it or pay for it. The consumer pays for it. So how is that looking as a replacement therapy for these FDA approved drugs that we got to pay for it? So he's looking at that to cut costs to make the consumer pay for a pivot product from FDA approved drugs. So there's two tracks running right now coming out of Washington, but absolutely a whole lot of funding. Virginia universities and hospitals, they've already sent up the flare that, hey, we're in trouble. They just pulled our funding on some of these studies that we're halfway through. And if you recall, Biden has funded the moonshot on cancer research. Trump pulled all that money out. So can the courts reverse it in the next 30, 60, 90 days? Who knows? But it's a big cluster, you know what, right now when it comes to that.
Right.
Laura, I was able
Yeah.
to get this up and going,
Great.
so.
Yep, this
feel
is
free
the
to go
right
whenever
one.
You'd like.
Yeah, that's great. I really, but first of all, before I start, I just want to thank you. I really, truly thank you for allowing us to be able to educate you tonight, and so that you can, you know, learn more and answer some questions, because just like what John said, there's too many cities and localities that are just not willing to, you know, they basically, you know, skim the surface of anything, pass their legislation, and not truly look at the issue. So again, I really appreciate you taking time to hear us tonight. So, but I'll kind of get started a little bit. I know I talked to John, and he said he was actually going to be bringing some samples to show you what kratom is. And he can pass those on as I'm speaking here. I've noticed that even when I've testified at my own state, none of the senators, when I was there at the hearing, they didn't know what it was. They'd never seen it. And so it's important to actually see it. It really is, you know, a ground up leaf. And so, you know, just a little bit of a history. It's grown as a tree that's in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, areas like that. It's actually a cousin to the coffee plant. And what they do is they process the leaves over there, and they grind the leaves up into a powder. And then the powder is then either sold as an actual powder supplement to take. It's put into capsules. Sometimes it's you know, it's further processed into some extracts. And recently some products have been introduced, such as like gummies, you know, similar to what's happened with cannabis. And so, you know, there's lots of varieties to take this. And then also brewed into tea. Some people actually do that. Myself, and I'll talk about my story in a bit, I actually just consume the powder. And I actually just take the powder and put it in a blender bottle and shake it up and drink it. So that's what I typically do because it works better for me, the actual powder. But I'll talk a little bit about my story in the future, or on the next couple slides. But it's important to know that kratom's been consumed for centuries. You know, it's native to these countries, and the workers will, you know, be lagging in energy, or they have pain, and they will actually take a tree leaf off of the kratom tree and chew it. And that's where they get the effects from kratom. So, or they actually brew it into tea. You can actually see it on the roadsides. And so it's been around for centuries. And it has over 40 different alkaloids, and metrogenine is the one that's the most prevalent. That's the most one that you constantly hear people speaking about. The other alkaloid that you're going to hear mentioned, I'll again address a little bit more later, is 7-hydroxymetrogenine. And it's really important to understand what that alkaloid is as well. But just for sakes right now, realize that is less than 2% of the alkaloid content of a dry kratom leaf. Actually, in most situations, when they do the lab analysis on kratom, it's less than 1%. Sometimes it's not even there. So it's important to understand, because it is the most psychoactive compound that's in kratom, but it's in very tiny amounts, and you know, over the whole plant. Next slide. One thing I wanted to bring up the fact is a lot of cities and localities, they are under the impression, and I see this over and over again in like articles where they're talking about it being smoked. Just make that very clear. You do not smoke kratom. You do not inject it. It's only consumed. So just make that clear, because there's a lot of places that do not understand that, and they will act like it's heroin. They call it a synthetic heroin, you know, as if you could inject it, which is wrong. So what's interesting about this plant is that depending on how much you take, it has different effects. So low doses, which would be about 1 to 3 grams, which is approximately about anywhere between a half a teaspoon worth. That's how you can kind of see. That is a stimulating dose. And that is kind of like coffee. So sometimes people will take a teaspoon of this and it gives them a little bit of energy, mind clearing. It's great for students and things sometimes because it helps them think better. And, you know, again, it's a lot like coffee in that situation. But then there's also a little bit higher doses that give you more of the relaxing and analgesic effects. Some people use the various strains, like the red strains, to actually help them sleep, because it can be a little bit sedating. And also those that have pain, a little bit higher doses are needed to be able to get that analgesic effect. And like we talked about, it's in various forms, how it's consumed. And it's important to understand, a lot of people scream and cry that it's not FDA approved. Well, there's a reason, because it's literally a dietary supplement, or it's treated as if it's literally like anything like fish oil. You know, it's obviously not FDA approved. None of your vitamin that you take over the counter is not FDA approved. You know, obviously they want to make sure it's labeled correctly and it's pure, but people tend to think that they treat this like it's an actual drug or a food, but that is not how it's regulated. Next slide. So these are the two main reasons that people consume kratom is for chronic pain, anxiety, depression, mood, like I say, energy, and it's also used for opioid withdrawal symptoms. And we'll go into that. John's actually going to go into that a little bit when he gets to the slide. He's going to talk about addiction and actually how it's used to help with these opioid withdrawals. But I'll tell you a little bit about my experience, because I am an 8-year consumer of kratom. I've actually been a chronic pain patient for 13 years. I have a condition called trigeminal neuralgia, which is a chronic condition where it affects my face. So I have chronic facial nerve pain on the top half of my face. So if you have ever had an ice cream headache, you can feel kind of what I feel. It affects that trigeminal nerve. And so it's like I have an ice cream headache that's 24/7 for 13 years that's never stopped. And in fact, my condition is nicknamed the suicide disease because it is so painful. And so in the course of coming down with this condition, of course, I went through all of the traditional routes. I went through probably up to 25 different medications, Botox, blocks, everything you can think of, infusions. And I actually even had brain surgery where they released the nerve in my head to try to help the pain. And I even had a stimulator implanted in my face to try to distract my brain from the pain. But none of these were effective. And so I was put into pain management with, I'm from Utah, so I was turned over to pain management. And of course, due to the opioid, crisis and things going on, I was given 2 opioids per day, which in a lot of states, you can't even get that. But what was difficult is with opioids, as you know, it gives you, 4 to 5 hours worth of pain control. Well, there's 24 hours in the day. So I had to choose which hours of the day I was going to have pain control. So I had to choose whether I was going to function in the day or I was going to sleep at night. So it consumed my life. It was hell. I was in the hospital weekly on an IV drip to try to help the pain. So it was terrible. And I was, frantically trying to find something. I thought cannabis would be my answer. So I fought really hard to try to get that legalized here in Utah. And when it was legalized, I tried it and it just did not help me. It made my anxiety go up and it just did not help my pain at all. So I was really distraught until a friend of mine that lives in Iowa told me, hey, there's this supplement called Kratom that I take that really works. And I almost didn't believe it. I thought, well, I've tried everything else. So I ordered some and started taking it, and I was just absolutely shocked because within 15 to 20 minutes, my pain dropped up to like 5 to 6 points. It was as effective as an opioid pain medication. And I was just blown away. I could not truly believe. And so I instantly went down to 1 opioid per day and happily told my doctor that, hey, I'm just so excited. I found this supplement. And of course, what did he do? But he Googled it and said, oh, this is bad stuff. Of course, saw, the first hits and said, you have to choose between opioids or Kratom. And I said, well, then I choose Kratom because I can dose consistently, throughout the 24-hour period to keep my pain under control, whereas you will only give me 2 opioids per day. And I walked out of there without a prescription. And so I've never turned back there. I'll be honest, I do have a small opioid pain prescription for when I have a really, really bad flare. But again, I visit my pain doctor once a year, and he's just thrilled with the success I'm having with Kratom. So it's really has been a huge change for me. It's truly saved my life, as you'll hear other stories from other people. But there are others that have mental health issues, PTSD, severe anxiety and depression that have really, again, it's really, really helped them. But again, I'm going to skip on the opioid withdrawal and the addiction until we get to John's slide. So if we can go to the next slide. So one thing I just want to tell you is just what happened with my doctor. Evaluating research is not, you can look on here, a Google search, reading Wikipedia, listening to a podcast, a personal story, especially reading the title of a journal article, reading the abstract. All of these things, a lot of people are skimming the surface. For instance, they will go in and they will say, oh, there's an article that said that Kratom has caused liver damage. And they will, they'll quote that. They'll say, oh, here's a source. And it's quoted that it's going to hurt your liver, or there's going to be a pulmonary reaction there. But what's interesting is if you dig into the actual article, you'll see that there's a lot of problems with the title. A lot of times that is not, it's very, very, very common that you can see from the backup in the article, that is not what caused some of their physical issues. Most of them had pre-existing conditions and such. In fact, there was one situation, couple of situations in this article. There's an article called Kratom Pharmacology, Clinical Implications and Outlook, a comprehensive review. It's in that other PowerPoint that you had pulled up before, but I believe it was in Lowell, Massachusetts. I'm almost certain it was in that hearing that someone and the government pulled up a PowerPoint that referenced that particular study. So I went ahead and I took that study and I pulled it apart. There's like 90 different sources in it that cited. And I looked at almost every single one of them. And again, like in a situation where it said it caused pulmonary problems, you know, they were saying, oh, it causes all these lung issues and this. Well, the person in the article had smoked for 7.5 years and had started kratom the month before and had some lung issues. And they said, oh, it has to be the kratom. Or people that had, you know, liver issue, the person had drunk vodka for 3 years. And yet they were saying when he came in and presented himself, it was the kratom that did it. So again, it's really critical that you evaluate the research and really look at it versus just skimming the surface and, you know, making conclusions from that. Also too, oh yeah, that's fine. You keep it here. It's
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's important to know that a lot of these news stories, as you always know, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. You typically get a lot of people, you know, reporting negative things versus, you know, the positive stories. And that's no different with kratom. So, but anyway, this picture is really, it's a great, I've loved when I found this picture because, you know, of course you can see this cat, he did not cave in the roof here. And I think this is what's happening in a lot of these cases. Correlation does not imply causation. And it too commonly, that's how people are treating this. Go ahead, next. So, you know, again, many of these studies are based on very limited case studies. They'll present with 2 people and they publish the paper and say, you know, this is what happens to it. So they're based on a lot of uncontrolled things. Someone walks into the ER, they don't even do a full toxicology report on them. They just hear the guy said, oh, I started taking kratom 2 weeks ago, and they jump to conclusions that it was kratom. So this is really important to look at those scientific studies to see how you know they're using that. Again, I explained the pre-existing conditions are often disregarded. And, you know, again, we do know there's a great need for continual long-term studies. I mean, we certainly want to see more. I know John just mentioned that, you know, a lot of animal studies have been done, but we are currently at Johns Hopkins University. There's a whole research division that is now they're actually studying, you know, withdrawals and all these different things that happen with patients, real life patients. So we're getting more and more science is coming every single day. And in fact, I was just at a kratom symposium 2 weeks ago with John. And for 4 days, we sat and listened to people throughout the globe talking about all the studies they're doing. It's incredible, even to animals like dogs. It's amazing to see the science that's coming out. So there's a lot of good things to come as well. Next slide. So we kind of went over that first one where it talks about the different, you know, just make sure you're looking at the details in some of these studies. The one thing I want to cover on this slide is the toxicology screen. And many times it's interesting because what will happen is a so-called adverse event will happen, or even quote a death will happen, and they find kratom in their possession or in their home or their car. And often they go in and do a toxicology report. They see metrogenine as a substance. In so many times they will actually rule things as if it's a metrogenine, you know, death or whatever. But the reality of it is they could have several other polydrugs in their system. They have fentanyl. I mean, literally, we've seen it where in a cause of death, they've said it's a metrogenine death, but they have fentanyl in their system. So it's just crazy. And then in sometimes we're finding that there's been some cases where the family has literally requested that they said, we're sure it's kratom. Please do not test for anything but metrogene. So they've even not even done a full toxicology screen, which is unbelievable. But what was really interesting to me is at this summit that I was just barely at, the symposium, I was able to speak to a toxicologist. And he was explaining to me that when they do the toxicology, that they have to be 100% sure that when they say something's in the blood or the body, it's there. But what he said is interesting is that a medical examiner or coroner really only needs to be 51% sure. They have to come up with the cause of death. And a lot of times they, put 2 and 2 together. And more these days, they're looking, and if they see metrogene there, they're ruling it a metrogene toxicity death, which is not accurate. In fact, even if you do a simple Google search, it even says that in 20 to 30% of cases, the cause of death is wrong. And so, it's always remember that there's right now, I just looked it up today, over 500 cases of acetaminophen deaths just occurred in the past year. So, it's just important to know that don't over evaluate some of these claims because there are issues with medical examiners and cause of deaths. Next. Okay, and this one I'm actually going to turn over to the specialist, John, because this is his wheelhouse, whereas I'm more of a patient, a focus. John, this is his baby. So I'm just going to turn this over to John.
Thank you, Laura. I'm a person in recovery. I've been clean and sober 42 years. Got sober in the Marine Corps. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. And, last 25 years, I ran a recovery center run by people in recovery to help people in recovery. We're nationally known and we're a pretty good sized center. Back in 2014, kratom was coming up on our drug test. And I was asking the kids, what is kratom? I never heard of it before. But I didn't notice they were strung out. Not like you can tell when somebody's on methadone or Suboxone, but I couldn't tell. And they said, well, it helps me with my obsession to use. It helps me with my anxiety, my PTSD. And I said, well, where do you get it? And they said, well, at the vape store. I said, well, shit, that can't be good. Nothing good comes out of there. So, well, here's what I found out, because I actually went to a manufacturer and said, what is this stuff? What's going on? And they explained it to me pretty much what Laura just explained. And it's not a China chemical. It's a plant. It's a natural plant. And uses a natural plant, it has great value and benefits. And but one thing I noticed was the opiate addicts could use this to help alleviate the pain associated with the withdrawal from opiates. And, we didn't have, this is, like I say, back in 2014 or so. And so what I did, I went out and got a scientist and a doctor and got to, fund this little survey we did. We went out on the streets in Richmond. We got 30 opiate addicts off the streets, put them in sober living, gave them access to kratom, no charge. And after a week, it just took about 6 months to find these 30 folks. But after a week, 29 out of 30 successfully detoxed using kratom off of opiates. And it wasn't quite as good as Suboxone, but close. Most of them were reporting, it was like 60 to 80% as effective as Suboxone. And I thought, well, this has got to be good, Well, then shortly thereafter, Medicaid expanded, and now we got Suboxone clinics on every corner. And that's why you're looking at that one little strip going around. That's terrifying, these Suboxone doctors, because all of a sudden somebody can buy something that looks like a strip. Instead of, the government paying for it, they get to pay for it. And it's almost 1/2 or 3/4 or 85% of the effective. So I can see where people were cutting into people's money. They would have a problem with that. But, to further discuss this, as I learned more about the kratom, I noticed a lot of addicts, they're not going to quit doing drugs, but they might run out, so they'll use kratom as a supplement to hold back the withdrawal to hank until they can get their next fix. So it keeps them alive and in the game. And then I got to thinking, well, what could be wrong and this is what we're trying to do, get Kratom regulated, which means they have to follow the FDA regulatory guidelines for good manufacturing practices for dietary and botanical supplements. What could possibly be wrong with having a product available, a factory-made GMP FDA regulatory product versus a one pill kills illegal substance? You know, we know everything's contaminated out there. And we see a lot of that. And we think as a harm reduction tool, this has got to be the best thing since sliced bread. And another thing is most addicts and alcoholics, there's 50 million of them, according to SAMHSA in America, they don't want to go to rehab because they don't want to quit everything. They don't want to give up a bong hit or a Budweiser. They just want to stop the substances that's causing them trouble. Well, this is a great caveat for Kratom. And you know, so looking at the harm reduction value and then the add value, I go to Congress and I watch Nora Volkow testify to Congress. She's the director of NIDA, the National Institute for Drug Abuse. She told Congress, she said, look, Kratom is the fastest rising harm reduction tool we got right now. And they've invested over $100 million in this, you know, all these clinical studies they got going on. And right now they're halfway through a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins. So when you look at the harm reduction value, and then because I spent 10 years going around the country doing my recovery stuff, I was also looking at these harm reduction communities, these consumer communities of these other products, but Kratom was one of them. And I found out that Kratom has an incredible, I mean, they got one of the most amazing communities I've ever seen out there. I mean, you got folks, when they cut off overprescribing opiates, you know, 60% of these folks were left without pain medication. 60%, you know, to save that 40% who was abusing it, you know. So you got these old folks, these permanently injured folks, these chronic pain folks, they found Kratom. So it solved their problem. And then back, you got to realize 10 years ago, the veterans, they were getting, you know, squat for decent ongoing medical care coming back from these wars. So the veterans found solution, the old folks found solution, the chronic pain people found solution, the addicts found solution. And then every day I get an email from an alcoholic. Hey, I was drinking 2/5 a day. I went to rehab, I went to AA, I went to church. Nothing worked. I found Kratom. You know, I do 2 grams in the morning, 2 grams in the afternoon, and 2 grams at dinner. And I ain't had a drink in 5 years. So the reports, they're just flowing and rolling in. You know, it's like, this is to me no-brainer stuff, you know. And here's another thing. All the problems, and I can say this, every problem I've seen with Kratom or Kratom-related death, it's been an adulterated product. It's been a non-GMP product, you know. Well, handful of exceptions. A couple of people swear that they had a problem with the GMP product. Well, take that up with the manufacturer of the product. Don't blame the plant. Don't blame the overall industry because of it. So there are a lot of moving parts, but at the end of the day, when you weigh out the value, to me, it's like, you know, we need regulations. You can't have adulterated product. They got to be 21 and older. You can't target children. You got to use only GMP products. It's just real simple stuff. And these products I've passed around, these are GMP products. One's the powder leaf, one's a subliminal, you know, you put it on your tongue, and one is an eyedropper that's actually got the dropper, so you know you can't possibly chug all the servings in one swoop. You know, you use half an eyedropper, whatever your dose level is. So it's not hard to regulate it. And then the trouble with banning, like those 6 states that jumped out in front back in 2017, there's 6 states, their Schedule 1 is a felony. They're ruining people's lives. And that's a big problem with the ban. It always ends up on Schedule 1. And that is the worst thing in the world, because Kratom, there is value, there is science, they are studying. It's not like something that has no value. So we need communities. If the states are going to allow the gag and go back and forth, we need communities to step up and be the tip of the spear and say, by God, we're going to regulate it. We're going to do this right. You know, and I just really, the real simple stuff is 21 and older, GMP products, no targeting kids. And since Virginia regulated. We don't have a problem with kids doing it or teenagers. It just doesn't exist down there. I go to 3 different jails. You know, I'm a jail guy. I carry a lot of meetings in the jails and prisons. Richmond has, I think 5,000 jail population of a community of 1.5 million. They don't have one kratom person in the jail there. Nobody's on the court docket for kratom. The crime associated with it, the abuse, it just doesn't exist. You know, if you do proper regulation, that's the solve. That's really where you want to go.
Can I just ask, where you in your presentation, what does the DEA classify this as?
They say it's a drug of concern based on the FDA improperly spoiling this back. There's a pissing contest taking place between the DEA and the FDA. It started in 2016. The DEA, based on the FDA suggesting we're going to ban it, the DEA says we're going to ban kratom. They gave 30 days notice. 125,000 people called Congress, petitioned the government. Senators called the DEA and said, look, I take this product. You can't ban it. First time in the history of the DEA, they reversed the ban. You don't think they don't have a resentment toward that? And then the FDA, they keep using these de facto bans. You know, they're overstepping their 1994 Congressional DeSay Act authority by messing with this industry. So there's a lot of elementary school ground stuff taking place in Washington, and we're falling victim of it. And it's got to stop. And that's why we urge these local communities to, you know, take a big boy step and solve some problems here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. You want next slide?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. So, you know, we addressed a few of these prior, but I just want to, you know, reinforce what John just said. You know, with the opioid crisis out there, patients literally cannot get pain medication. They are dying. They are turning to the street. They're going to the black market and risking their lives getting pills that could be laced with fentanyl because they're not being able to treat their pain. And so this is a huge tool for people to be able to, you know, to treat their pain without having to get a prescription, which is big. The other thing is the side effects with kratom are minimal compared to many of these pharmaceuticals. And like I said, trust me, I've been on a lot of them. The biggest side effect that is most people experience is constipation, very similar to opioids. It is a partial opiate agonist, which means that if it was like a little fork that had all of the, you know, little prongs there, it only attaches to part of those little prongs. And so that's where it does not have the respiratory depression like a normal opioid does, but it does have some of the same characteristics, which is what causes that, obviously the pain control, but then it also can cause constipation. So again, you know, you can easily treat that with, you know, over the counter things. So, but I mean, the other side effects is just not there. I mean, I was on gabapentin for the highest dose for a year, and it literally destroyed my short-term memory. I mean, John can attest to that. Anybody I work with realizes that I really struggle with memory just because, you know, that was a unforeseen consequence from that drug. And there's lots of others that I just couldn't even tolerate. I mean, they talk about, you know, worrying about, oh gosh, you know, is this going to make you high? Is it going to make you altered? I'm like, have you ever been on half of these drugs that they give you? You know, these are ones they don't even blink twice at prescribing. And yet they have severe side effects that absolutely can alter you, but you know, no one questions that. So, but you know, it's a very good alternative. And the other thing is it's affordable. I mean, people can actually, you know, some of these pharmaceuticals, they can't afford to go to the doctor all of the time and, you know, get prescriptions. If they have opiates and they're lucky enough to get an opioid, they have to see their doctor once a month, which, you know, is a copay and then the meds and everything. So it's actually a more affordable option for patients as well. So next slide.
Laura, can I ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I mean, I looked at it. How do you know how much to take? I weigh 184 pounds. Let's say I
good
went to
question.
go on yourself.
Good,
How
very
do
good
I-
question. Yeah,
How do I know
so
what to take?
yes, okay, so what, and this is, okay, if I had my dream, here's my dream. The one thing that John said is important, and we've both said, is that, of course, this is not a drug. So there's not something, we can't say medical claims. We can't say, oh, this many grams is going to, solve your chronic pain. You literally aren't allowed to say that, especially if you're a vendor. So again, it makes it a little bit challenging. But what the resources out there say is that, number one, less is best. You always want to start very, very low and slow. So again, I always tell people that are trying it, take a fourth of a teaspoon. See, if it causes any issues. The biggest side effect that some people have, especially if they take too much, is that they will throw up. And that has been shown in all of the Johns Hopkins studies too. If they take too much, they throw up. And so again, that's why you want to start, and you just want to start slow. Now, for me, I told you I've been an 8-year consumer. I have not changed my grams that I take in 8 years. I actually take anywhere between 10 to 12 grams per day, which 1 teaspoon is about 2.5 grams. So that kind of gives you an idea how much I take. And so again, I've not needed to increase that dose. Yes, does it mean that you have to be responsible? Absolutely. There are people out there that could say, well, you know what, I'm just going to chase more and more and more. I'm going to do higher and higher just because I want to have zero pain, or I want to have zero anxiety. Well, a responsible consumer of anything, and it's even like a beer or having an energy drink. You can't say, well, I'm still tired, I'm going to go take another energy drink. I mean, you've got to be smart and you've got to be responsible as a consumer. But yes, it's very, very doable to maintain low doses. And like John said, a lot of times these ex-addicts are able to, consistently take a couple of low doses per day, and it's enough to keep those withdrawals and those, all of the cravings for any of those substances away. Because as you know, addiction is not just about addiction. There's usually underlying issues like PTSD, trauma, mental illness, and things that have led to the addiction.
Hey, Laura,
Yes.
I want to add that piece on this. It's very important to know that Kratom is a product that basically on powder, no matter how much you take, it has a sealing effect. You can't, some people, there is a way to take it and you get a little bit of your shirt, a little bit of a high, not much of one, but no matter how much you take, you can only get but so high of effect. It has an effect. That's because it's a partial agonist, not a full agonist. Morphine, codeine, oxy, they're full agonists, so you can get higher and higher and higher till you die. Kratom doesn't have the alkaloid that suppresses your heart. That's why it's a partial agonist. And there are some kids, and then you'll notice the Hopkins study, there's a 3% addiction profile. There are some people, I say kids because most people are younger than me. If you're that person that you think you're going to chase that high and use it consistently, you can't get addicted to it. However, it's a lot easier to get off of Kratom as an addiction than it is probably any other substance you can be addicted to, with the exception of a few people. They just, it's difficult. But so the truth is, of all the substances you can abuse, this is probably the best one. But the good news is only 3% of people really truly abuse it. It has an 87% of these people all across America don't have a problem with it, and there's a 10% dependency rate, but that's because people use it as a replacement product for another drug. So, there's just so much there for this. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, and I will say too, as well, being a person that's tried numerous pharmaceuticals, you can't just go cold turkey off of pharmaceuticals. It took me to come off of gabapentin because of the severe withdrawals. It took me 6 months to come off of 3,600 milligrams. So, I mean, this is no different. You can't be expected, if you're taking it daily, to just say, oh, I'm going to go cold turkey and have zero withdrawals. But most people show that I just talked to an individual a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, tell me your real experience, because he, felt like he was just pushing it. He was an ex-addict, and he said, no, I just need to get off of it. And he said he felt, kind of crummy for 3 or 4 days. And, within a week, everything was gone. It was fine. But he says, nothing like it was with heroin, where I didn't sleep for 17 days when he was trying to withdraw from that. So, again, it's like anything. you know, any adult substance, it has to be respected.
Those adulterated products. that
And adulterated,
we're
yes,
talking about,
absolutely.
you
Yes.
got 708, that's a
Oh,
full.
and that, perfect. Next slide, and we'll talk all about, good
I have
lead. Good
another
lead in.
question.
Yes,
Most of the places that have approved this kratom, is it 18 years old or 21 years old?
21. I think only one state.
The reason I asked is because of the Consumer Protection Ordinance has 18 in it.
yes, it's, again, it's John's right. Most of the states are passing 21, but there are some that say, hey, I've heard this all the time. If they can go to war, they can take a substance. So, but the majority are saying 21 and up.
Well, you can determine here what age, but the only reason that one place said 18, this is important to hear this, is because there's a lot of addicts that are under 21.
Yes, good point.
That the professionals thought it'd be good that they had access to this if they were under 21.
Very good point. Very good. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about 7-hydroxymetrogenine. I'll just call it 7-OH. That's what it's called in the market, just because it's hard to say. So it's super important to understand this. This right here is, if you take anything away from this talk today, it's this, is 7-OH is bad news. What happens in the body is this: when someone consumes kratom, you actually consume, and it, you know, has metrogenine in it, and your body actually produces the alkaloid 7-OH in tiny little, you know, I told you, less than 2%, 1%, sometimes none. But what some of these, I call them greedy people, have figured out, these chemists have figured out a way to extract this alkaloid and make it into a synthetic form. Very much like I know you guys have heard about like Delta 8. It's kind of a similar situation there with, you know, with cannabis. So they have figured out how to create this new product. It's important to realize this is not kratom. Yes, it has, you know, again, it's an alkaloid that's been pulled out, but it's not kratom. So they consider it semi-synthetic or full synthetic just because it is definitely not kratom, but it has, you know, some ties back to the original plant. What is important to understand is literally it has a binding affinity of 14 to 22 times greater than morphine. This is powerful stuff, and it's extremely addicting. And more than anything, the most unsettling thing is they have been allowed to put this on the market with no science backing to it. Whereas metrogenine and kratom have the science behind it, 7-OH products do not have that science. And so, but it is a problem because of this. I'll tell you why. And I learned this again at the Kratom Symposium. When a toxicologist does a screen, they cannot differentiate between metrogenine and 7-hydroxymetrogenine. It will come up in their tests as metrogenine. He said that 7-hydroxy or 7-OH is a very unstable alkaloid, and which means that very quickly your body breaks it down, which obviously helps with a lot of things in the real plant, but there is no way for them to actually test for this. So this is the real risk in the communities. As you can see on these pictures here, what's happening is they are alluding to narcotics. That's who they're going for. I had to black out the names so I didn't get in trouble on here, but there are things like perks and oxy. I mean, literally the names are, you know, that makes them sound like you are taking an opioid. And these are being sold. And this is the problem, is that in a lot of these communities, there is no regulation put in place. And so these are just over the counter, or they will, you know, they might keep them behind the counter for adults, but they're still being sold. So this is the real risk. And a lot of these, quote, adverse events that are happening are not because of kratom or metrogenine. It's because of these 7-OH products. So the good thing about this regulation, the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, is that is one of the comments in there. One of the line items is that nothing, that it has to have it lower than 2% of the whole plant has to be 7-OH. So what this does is immediately make any of these 7-OH products illegal. Utah,
Can I just ask a question?
yes,
Dylan, do any of the stores in Bellingham sell this 7-OH?
I can't tell you that, maybe, maybe.
No, I'm asking Dylan,
Oh, good.
our health agent.
I know of at least one. I can't, I know, I can confirm one.
Robbie wouldn't have any other information.
No.
Okay.
You know, I would, this is an area which is vital to our cause, protecting the plant, help get rid of the adulterated products. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But, you know, there are stores, I was in a store today that had that in it, and I gave the guy a bunch of crap about it. You know, really, and he said, look, man, I just work here. I said, well, you need to let the owner know this is BS and this is hurting people. But the good news is it's easy to do a site visit on these stores. You know, if you want to pass the Creative Consumer Protection Act, I'll send a soldier up here to go through each store and make sure they eliminate all these adulterated products. I'll do that for you because I want you to have a safe community. I don't want these products in my community. I don't want them in your community. But it's an easy task to eliminate them. That's not a hard thing.
They don't look exactly like the Creative.
Right,
No, but you-
right.
Or do they?
Well, this is
Exactly.
what kratom looks like.
Right,
and
yeah.
that-
Yeah.
Isn't it like, they're almost in like pill, form, right?
Well,
Yes, they're in pill form.
They can,
Press top.
they can slip them in some of the other,
drug.
it's on the label.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
worrying like if you
Yeah.
have like the, under the tongue, you know, like cane.
Yeah, and that's why they're so powerful. And, you know, and these, and, you know, they're being marketed as if they're these incredibly safe thing. And, you know, they've been told by the AKA and other places that they cannot claim that this is kratom. But, you know, as you can see, metrogenine is part of the name. And so they continue to still market it as if it's a kratom product. And I mean, we just drive this home. It is not, it is full synthetic. This is nothing like metrogenine. And again, we are heard from the mouth out of these scientists when we were at the symposium about how dangerous these are and what a risk this is to the entire industry. So, I mean, across the board, there was not one scientist that said there's a place for these. Now, could there someday be a, you know, who knows, a pharmaceutical someday that somebody could figure out how to do this and make it a safe, you know, pharmaceutical? Maybe so, but absolutely not. But it is a real risk right now that we're just telling all the communities that this is bad news and this needs to be taken off the shelves for sure. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. And I think we've covered most of this. I know John was talking to you about the FDA and the DEA. One thing just to note on here, Mayo Clinic, they are one of the top hits, aren't they, John? Top
Yeah.
hits on the Google study. They have conducted 0 studies, none. And, but yet Johns Hopkins, University of Florida, they're leading the research. And NIDA, I mean, you know, John, you can tell them a little bit about NIDA and how, I mean, again, just, you know, you can confirm that, I mean, these are legit big entities that are behind kratom and definitely, you know, see that there's huge potential here and, you know, but unfortunately, you know, the Mayo Clinic is sitting on the coattails of the FDA. And John, do you want to tell them about the study that FDA did?
Well, the FDA, they did conduct a human dose study to make sure it was safe, and it passed with flying colors. And they couldn't testify in court that it caused harm. But here's the interesting thing about this, and this is what's so important. What you see with the Mayo Clinic and some of these other places, the FDA, is kind of like watching news. You got Fox on one side and CNN on the other. You know, who you want to go to and get what from. And this is, they I don't even know what the name is for, but they've done this to the kratom industry and what we're trying to do. And it's just pathetic. So, you know, but I was going to make a suggestion. You guys are fabulous. Listen to me and Laura. There's some other folks that maybe they could cover some stuff we may have missed, but I know they got some added value to the conversation. Some came from a long way away to add value. So Laura, let's
Yeah, we'll wrap up. So last thing, I just go to the last slide. And
Okay.
that's the last slide that's going to be shown here is the Kratom. It shows the states that have enacted the
There you
Kratom
go.
Consumer Protection Act. And just like you said, I'm going to, just and you've read that, it's age restrictions, make sure it's GMP standard labeling is in place and that it's not a synthetic product. So, I mean, that's really what we're pushing for and, hoping that, rather than a ban, that we're looking for regulation because tell them your quote, John, your famous quote that, I love that you say.
Oh, you got the power to ban it, you got the power to regulate it, man.
There it is. I
That's
love
for
it.
sure. Be a leader, regulate, but I was gonna say this, what are we missing that you guys can add value to?
Yeah.
So I would love to just touch on the ceiling effect and give a personal experience. I have a friend who she has fibromyalgia and she's a social worker. She actually just adopted a boy and which is very exciting. And she said she calls herself, she has an addict personality. She drinks a lot of caffeine, she vapes, but she doesn't do any hard drugs, obviously. She's a social worker and she's in chronic pain. So I gave her Kratom and she was worried about the addiction aspect because of her personality. And I said, if you really listen, the leaf will speak to you and it'll tell you when you take too much. And she said she got that little itch of, I just want to feel a little bit better. I feel great. Let me get more, that addiction thought. And she said she took an extra half a teaspoon and had to lay down and she never did it again. Like it completely told her there is that ceiling effect. It will just, it's very, very intelligent plant. And it's the same thing with the coca leaf. The coca leaf is also a very intelligent plant and that's cocaine. So when you extract it, it's bad. So getting these 7-OH products off the market is very important. I had sent Dylan an email with a lot of video information, kind of following up with Laura talked about the toxicology reports and how they have to be sure that it's in the blood, but the medical examiners, coroners don't have to be that sure about it. And as well as there was, sorry, she kept me up a lot last night, so I'm a little exhausted. So listening to Marilyn Hustis, I hope that you all, did you happen to share it with them yet or no?
Did you get it? Or no?
I only sent it to you because I
Then I'm
couldn't
gonna have
find
to send
email.
Oh, I think there was a little.
No, I got the original presentation with the 37 or 38 slides.
Yeah, so
I
I'm
went
actually,
through every one of those.
so I'm representing myself. I'm actually not with the AKA, although I highly respect and
Their video, the videos she sent were different.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta forward those over.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Normally I would have brought a pamphlet and I have a bunch of testimonies. We have a petition going where we have space where people can write down their testimonies and usually I have a printout copy of that. I'm going to, is it okay if I forward that all to you?
Yeah, I'll get it over to you.
Yeah,
Any information that you can impart to us, for
Yeah.
us to study,
which
is what I want.
that is music to my ears, sir.
Now,
We normally don't get that kind of enthusiasm, so it's very
Well,
exciting.
if we're gonna regulate something, I wanna know all about it, because I wanna answer the questions that businesses are gonna have
Right,
when we put something forth.
Yeah.
So the more information I have,
yeah,
it makes it easier for me to make a decision.
yeah, absolutely.
And the
I
one
haven't
thing,
made a decision
Right,
saying we should ban it or we should regulate it.
the
Or
one thing
just
I highly
or
suggest,
the third-
oh, sorry,
the
go ahead.
third option is
Just
we
leave it
don't do
alone.
anything
yeah.
until the state comes
State
in and
does something.
says, this is what we think you should do.
Yeah,
Because I don't wanna regulate it and then have the state come in and say, no, you can't do that.
oh, right, okay. I don't-
So,
Like the smoking, when we were to 21, and then they had this magical thing, like, well, if you're born here, you can still go in and say, hey.
Oh, boy,
we're
Born
thinking
before
of
the ban.
regulating
We quickly
smoking
yeah,
Get rid of
to
that,
the
now we're gonna
point
change.
where if you were born after 2004,
yeah,
every year it stops somebody, an age group from smoking.
okay.
We're doing that right now. I mean,
Yeah.
we're contemplating doing that.
Love that.
And there are other cities and towns in Massachusetts that have done it.
Yeah.
It's passed the state Supreme Court,
Mhm,
and this is where I think we are with this.
yeah,
We don't wanna, this is my opinion, I don't know what the rest of the board, but if I regulate something, I don't want somebody to come in afterwards and say,
You did
you
it.
shouldn't have
It
done
was a
that.
terrible regulation.
yeah,
We're gonna do it this way.
right, So, I completely understand that.
I
and
wanna be first sometimes,
Yeah,
but sometimes I don't wanna.
yeah,
be.
fair. It's kind of in my.
And
my
I've read
scientific
all,
Way short, but shower, but I'm learning that that's not actually
right,
the
at
best.
this point, I've read everything that's been sent to us, all the
Okay.
presentations, all
Okay.
the fact sheets,
Yeah,
the ordinances, I've read it all already. And I haven't made a decision
Yeah.
yet, because I want more information.
That's-
That's why I was asking the questions earlier tonight.
and I found that website, it's kratom.org, 240 exhaustive list of interactions, so people have access to everything that they need to know, even if their doctor doesn't, and.
My
it
other
also-
problem that I have is taking it and driving.
It doesn't, it's not cognitively impairing though.
Right.
There's a study in there that they did a driving study.
Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna take certain cough medicines and drive.
Right.
Operate machinery.
Correct,
Yeah, I can send you.
yeah,
I
how,
can-
would-
That one's a tough one.
yeah.
Or you find packets of subocaine on the side of the road. You
So
know that didn't
so-
come in by carrier pigeons. I live on the main road and I'm going, so I got drug addicts, because they take that as to reduce the effect of the narcotic that they can't get anymore. But I'm sure they're taking more than one, or maybe it's a pinch of that instead of the whole 3 ounces or whatever it is. I'm going like, really? Whatever.
Another idea is ban adulterated products.
Yeah.
Right, don't,
Try to regulate natural kratom products. That might be an idea.
well, that I think, what Dylan said, we found one. I'm sure if there's one, there's more than one. It was like with vaping and vaping stuff that was coming from another
Oh,
country
yeah.
that had all sorts of stuff, including another state like California. So,
Right now, you
Unbelievable
asked
stuff.
about marijuana and how we deal with that in driving. And we're having a problem in Massachusetts. It's not like liquor where I can bring you out of the car,
give you,
give you field sobriety tests, do all the different, functions. You can't do that very much with marijuana.
No,
And the
stay
police are
here.
having a real problem with this driving under with marijuana. So I don't wanna add that burden too with this
Right.
for the police.
You don't,
I mean, those that have tried kratom.
they need
though,
a search warrant when
I
they
think that
go
I-
in.
Yeah.
Marijuana or any other drug.
I do
Because they have
think
to have
it's very
probable cause to
different.
get a search warrant.
I honestly think kratom's a medicine and it has more medicinal effects. Even that, I'm someone that uses cannabis. I have a medical cannabis card and I use kratom. I have Lyme's disease and I use it for chronic pain and I've dealt with mental health issues and I use it instead of, I've been on over 20 different psychiatric medications in my life. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and I was at the end of my stint with psychiatric medication. I was deemed treatment resistant and I just had this thought at the end of it, like maybe if I'm treatment resistant, maybe I'm not treating the right thing. Well, it turns out I have Lyme's disease and it was causing what they call psychiatric Lyme, but kratom has been the single most effective thing that I've ever found in my entire life to manage both mental and physical discomfort and suffering. And I think anyone that has taken it, especially, most people that use kratom are in some level of discomfort, whether it is physical or mental, and most people use it as a medicine. And I think that anyone that uses it with any type of relative frequency, the effects that you would actually have that would affect driving. I'm not advocating for driving on it, but I think it's a whole different ballgame than cannabis, where you're visually, audio impaired, there's a much different effect. So I do understand that is something that you have to think about, but with the medicinal potential of kratom and the life-saving capabilities, especially in we do have an opiate crisis. And sometimes I almost wish kratom didn't even have these effects. I wish that, because I think sometimes the fact that there are opiate users and we have this conversation about, these harder drugs, it's kind of giving, kratom is probably used at this point by more people just with like chronic pain and physical and mental health, than even the opiate community. And I really hope for the whole state of Massachusetts that this is really thought through before.
Kratom is a factor for the decline in
You know,
opioid overdose deaths.
I have a kind of interesting story with kratom because I didn't come to it from the addiction perspective, although I had addiction in my early 20s and had to go the Suboxone route to get off of it. And, I was clean for a very long period of time. But I vividly remember what that was with Charles. And I vividly remember the last time I took a Suboxone that was doctor prescribed. And I was getting ready to teach martial arts and I had a little bit of a headache. And I knew if I took one little sliver, I would feel better. It got me high as a kite. I remember it was the most embarrassing class I've ever taught in my life. It was literally horrible, but in the same moment, I needed that last little push to be like, you really don't need this. And then, that was, 18 years ago or whatever, it was 2008.
Embarrassed you out of it, right?
Yeah, right. It was, I was done
That'll
before,
work.
but when I went into rehab, I had fully committed to not doing it. And then I've had 5 emergency surgeries where I refused painkillers because I refused to be a doctor-induced patient again, which is how it started in the first place. So, and now, right now, as we speak, I have a 2-centimeter hemorrhaging cyst, so I'm internally bleeding. I have EDS and hypermobility. My legs ache. I have arthritis of the hips, and it's kind of a bummer because I'm only 40. But here I am, and I was in pain for so many years, and then Dylan introduced me to Kratom, and I never felt high off of it. I never felt like I couldn't drive. I never took it to the point where I got sick because I wasn't chasing some loophole high. I was just looking for a little bit of pain relief because the ibuprofen had burnt holes in my stomach, and I was done. I moved, I teach yoga, and my partner is an herbalist, and we do everything very holistic and naturally. And I wouldn't put anything in my body that I didn't think was safe, natural, effective, and, of quality. She talked about one of the biggest side effects being constipated. It's if you drink enough water, it's a dehydration factor. It's also with
Like caffeine.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And when I had taken it before I got pregnant with her, and then when I needed to decided not to take it while pregnant, it was so easy to get off of. It didn't, there was no issues, and I'm happy to have it now while I'm, sitting here in throbbing pain and showing up anyways. It's a very
Oh, and let me tell you something. It doesn't even compare. You're talking about cannabis, like it's in such a different world.
I'm gonna talk,
compare.
so, sorry,
Doing
Laura, I just have
both.
to say this, cannabis, actually doesn't work with me, it gives me seizures. So I cannot take cannabis. Cannabis is, I know a ton of people who do it, and I love the medical marijuana for the people who need it, and that it really helps.
Right.
But
I'm for
it
too.
doesn't, but I'm not railing against it. It almost killed me when I was younger. And, I'm not out there saying people should ban it because I know it helps people. There's
Yeah,
stuff on the street right now that have 0 benefit, and Kratom has so many benefits. It would be a grave disservice to do anything than either leave it alone or regulate it.
Thank
Well,
you
and my
for
little
the,
quote is, my
thank you
favorite
for the
quote is,
information. But could you send all that stuff to Dylan?
Yeah, so much. Oh, yeah.
and one thing I'm gonna add that I'm gonna send.
The better decision.
Yeah, and I am so grateful for you to say that, because we've just come up to people that seem to already have their mind made up, because she pointed it out, the Google search thing, the giant smear campaign against it. So it's really refreshing, and I want to hug each and every one of you, but I'll keep that to myself.
Was there anyone else? I just wanted to say, we're kind of wrapping up a little bit, but was there anyone else that wanted to share? Just because, yeah, please.
But I'm from Easton, Massachusetts, so I'm not that far from here. And we're a pretty conservative town. But I've gone through 20 years with my son being a heroin addict, and he overdosed 2 years ago from fentanyl. And he's one of the ones that will chase the Suboxone and use it like he shouldn't use it. What I said, I'm also a chronic pain patient. I've had 2 failed back surgeries, and on any given day, my pain I wake up and it's probably a good 5 the minute I step out of bed, and it only increases from there. I've been down the route of pain management, similar to what Laura said. I've been on the fentanyl patches, I've been on the opioids, all that stuff, weaned myself off of that because I didn't want to die. But we're limited now, and I think it would be really nice to have a town to work with that could forge a path where there's more tools for us. We don't have a lot of tools to deal with chronic pain. We don't have a lot of tools to deal with addiction. And when we're dealing with something that's a plant, as long as we're regulating it, and as long as we're moving forward and we're getting rid of the stuff that could hurt people, I think we have an opportunity here. I don't look at it as if this is something that we should just go into this banning type of mindset. I just think that's the wrong way to go with it, given where we're at today in society, given that we have so many people that are struggling on so many different levels. It would just be really nice to see a town come forward, whether you regulate it or whether you just ban and then leave it alone for whatever reason. But what I don't want to see is a ban across the board. And like John said, if you got the resources to ban it, you also have the resources to regulate it. And why wouldn't we go that route is what I'm trying to figure out. So you might hear stories from other towns of a woman who claimed that she lost a son to this. The person was 35 years old and was in Florida. And that's all I'm gonna say about it. It's not a mass problem. It's not. And to take that case and base all these bans on it, I think would be wrong and be short-sighted, because we really need to look at the science behind it. And when you look at the science and you go through it, I think what you're gonna find is that this is something that could be very beneficial, and it's something that could really help people moving forward. And I think this is the right place to do it. I don't know, but I'm hoping that you guys really take a look at this and don't ban it.
Thank you.
And I just want to say one last thing. I'm just going to sign off. I have to actually run out the door for another appointment, but I just want to thank you again for listening tonight. And I will be sending you a copy, if I haven't already, a copy of a hearing that was done. It was at the Capitol, and it has it's about an hour and a half long, but it literally will have everything that you would want to hear out of the horse's mouth from the top scientists. That honestly, if there's anything that you listen to, it's that you'll really hear the science and the backing from the people are really, they really know their stuff. So I'll send that to you tomorrow, and then you'll have that. But I just want to say thank you, and I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Laura. You've been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Just to wrap up everything tonight, the more information we have, the better it is for us. We appreciate everybody that came to the meeting and spoke. I don't think we're future looking a board. I think we take one step at a time. But I think with information, we make our decisions. But I do appreciate everybody coming out.
Can I say a thing for a minute?
Yeah.
Can I have a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Literally 90 seconds. The major thing with me is I'm sensitive to everything in the book, dairy, gluten. If I smoke, I don't smoke, but I did try a cigarette because I never smoked in my life, and my lungs, every kidney, my liver, everything's super hypersensitive because I've had Lyme for a decade, and I've been in bed for 3 of those 10 years, just with the most severe fatigue you'd ever imagine. So I'm like an old man when I'm in my 20s. And Kratom literally has 0 side effects other than maybe if I take astronomical amount, which I've had for my pain, which I don't because I taper it. But that's maybe a little nausea. And that's once a year, like one day out of the year, because I just took too much that day because I needed it. But if I take anything that's bad, like if I eat candy or eat fast food or like food that's semi-healthy that people would think is healthy, that's more expensive at Whole Foods, but that has like 2 ingredients out of 30, and those 2 ingredients will mess me up a little bit or a lot bit. To create that's all I want to say. I have a million, I could talk forever, but it just doesn't do anything, and I've taken it for 5 years, and it's been a miracle. It just relieves pain so well, and there's nothing like it, other than like a Percocet, but I can't even get those. Doctors won't give them to me because they don't see fibro. They don't see fibromyalgia and lupus and whatever, trigeminal neuralgia from whatever. They don't see the pain that it causes. So yeah, that's all. It works phenomenal, and it doesn't, no negative side effects.
All right, thank you, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, very good. Yeah, I think that's it on Kratom.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Have a great night, everybody.
Dylan, if you had any questions, this is Dan who knows more about kava bars. So if you.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if you wanted to have a quick conversation, I don't know.
I'm keeping that, I want to try.
I'm gonna give you my card. My cards are right over here. so-
Yeah, I would take 2 of those. I'll leave you one. Huh? 14 years, August 10th, 1982. I got 5 days on Marine, we were first, baby.
Sorry, I spent 40 years in military medicine, army.
Yeah.
What, we all go.
I just, I caught that when you said it, I was saying, damn, I thought, oh,
I was gonna say, if I can explain it in one, doing my second, third.
Yeah.
Spelled it out right.
Yeah.
I knew you were cool. I love it. I love it.
It's great, or we know.
Yeah, well, I think that's, I mean, the API or.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you go.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you
Just,
so
I
much.
just wanna.
I'm gonna say this one, but I need it for, that's what.
Did you? Yeah. Had to help myself. Like,
No, that's okay. I felt awful. I'm literally like, oh, I kid you not, I talked to you.
Yeah.
Hours later, they come in. I'm going home.
Well.
Right now, everything we do.
Jeff's gonna come down. It's gonna be a fun time. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
It was 100% verbatim. Like, yep. Yeah, I should have shown that it's 100%. Yeah. It was like, you know, how Jill said, he was back, it was quite farther and stuff. That they was my addiction. I was in my 20s, and when I said I had the time.
I'm sure everyone.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, maybe, like, I was gonna invite him to the house anyways, and have some people over. Sorry, I get.
But I don't know. It's not in any ordinance.
Well.
No, that's why I'm thinking, I don't know.
Any cycle at. And sale.
Preacher, but he got a great recovery.
2013. Amended it.
You know, but it'd be there straight.
I didn't say that my own organization, he's better for that. So, but you know,
I will, he said, listen,
the,
you're gonna go to court, and you're gonna get.
don't.
Can I have the-
That later. You don't know
I'm not
what-
sure home with me.
Okay. I said to
Want to
him.
bring it home?
Yeah.
No, we need to have them, bring it back.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you so much.
No, that's wonderful. This is exactly what I want.
Damn it. Dan said, anything you do, just know that it's the same cycle on the block, you know, ban for sale. Anyway. Convenience and over the store. Smoke shop. So,
Well, left them back.
yeah,
I almost brought the top tree herbs
Is
and I
that,
forgot it, I was so mad.
That is a regulation.
But like, I didn't have
So
any.
do we have this?
I felt very unprepared.
Not any specific. I can't include it. It's out one of the-
Yeah, they don't. No, and the rest of the building, actually, this whole roof.
Hot day.
So,
It covers that.
Any one. Mine all between the schools. Mine. They said, well, what are you gonna do about alcohol? You know what? We have. the laws
it's
for that.
like, I mean,
Are y'all taking that in the hallway so they don't have their meeting?
oh, yeah.
No, we're talking
You
about
know, alcohol fish. So that is a problem we had since 1930. Marijuana came out in the '60s. And that is not a problem that ever going away. They went underground.
Thank you so much. Have a great night. Yeah, don't forget anything.
You know, then people get sentences, I feel
I
bad.
think you're good. Okay.
You do the crime, you do the time.
Have a good one. I know, right? Can't forget it.
30 years, because you had 5 nickel bags. You know, it was wrong. and probably-
No, I agree.
Got
I agree.
frustrated. That's not fair either. You know, you're black and white, or green. You shouldn't get a higher sentence. It's one sentence for everybody. You know, it's like Massachusetts. You have a fire, you're not licensed. I think that's still staying. It's a 1-year mandatory. Now, do I think that's, you know, kind of harsh? Yeah, sometimes, but I'm saying, no, you should get a license to carry if you want. And
Right.
you should have that if you think you need it. But you shouldn't have a gun in your car unless somebody put it there to set you up.
No, I know.
You gotta
Hey,
prove
Ben.
that, you know.
Let's move on.
Okay,
I was at a motion to adjourn.
yeah.
We have stuff we have to
Right.
say.
Okay, tobacco inspections, anything
I don't have anything.
Okay.
We sent out, I mean, actually, that's a lie. I do have something. The only thing that I have is just, this letter was sent out to everybody.
Okay.
And we're having that meeting on March 4th.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so this letter was sent out and the meeting on March 4th will be the official hearing.
Okay.
And, I already
And that's
sent,
where we cut it back to say like, we have 27 now.
yep.
As they
Oh, that's the other
get
thing.
turned in, they regress down
Yep.
and down.
So, two things, talk with council, they said that that's fine. They said that we're all covered on that. They also said, cause I got a little pushback from one of the folks on the list. I was like, hey, they were on a list, do we really have to grandfather them? Council was like. Okay, put,
A
so
list for what? A new license?
we had a list of people that because we had individuals who were interested, and so we were taking their information down for when one came available, and then there were some available, they just had to find a spot and potentially pull it, but they never did,
But they're not available anymore.
and they're not
And
available.
now they're not available.
And now they're not
And
available.
never
And we
gonna
will
be available
regress them
again
down.
because
Yep.
now we-
One day in Bellingham, we may have 0.
So that,
Well,
so he
that's
said
the
that that's
goal, isn't
fine, the only thing that I'm working on is just, I have to put something in the paper that says that we did it.
Correct.
So that's that one.
Press release for that. That's-
Yeah, it's just a press release. I don't
Not
know if you guys
everybody's
were
gonna be
interested,
fine.
but Mr. Martinelli had asked me about in regards to Mr. Marchand's fine.
Right.
If there's any chance that, or anything interest wise that we could do, and they said no. So that's,
Has he paid yet?
he's not. So that is,
So he's not licensed to do any work in
Correct.
Bellingham.
Until he pulls the license, that's when you have to pay the
Correct.
fine,
The
correct?
only license we
Correct.
took from him is his septic.
Just a septic.
we took
He
his
can
septic
do his
hauler
dumpsters.
and his disposal system installer, those are his septic related,
Okay.
permits. He technically still has a waste,
Yeah, that's.
rubbish hauler,
Right.
That,
but,
nothing to do with
I'm
that.
trying to think, I feel like there was one other thing that
But
you'd
if he
asked
pays the
about, but I
fine,
can't
whatever he
remember it
renews,
right
Then
now.
it's all set.
He's all set. Okay, fine. Okay. That's fine. I thought that was
I think that's
appropriate.
it.
He can
yeah.
hold off until he needs to do it.
Oh, my
Oh,
thing-
the other
my
thing,
with the
I-
interest was-
I threw, we don't have to make a decision tonight, cause it's already 8:30. I don't mind if we wait until the next, if we wait until the next meeting, and I can give you
The
guys.
next meeting's gonna be a long one with
It
the,
will be,
March 4th on the,
is this quick or no?
Oh,
Not really, I was gonna say I wanna hire a food agent,
Okay. Well, I don't think that's,
so we already
We
have,
have three
we
or
already
four
have the
people.
resumes, so I just wanted.
I think we should
it's
interview
been,
him.
whoa, it's been 2 months on the inspections.
Yeah,
All of a sudden, we wanna hire somebody? I thought you said you could do it. When we dropped it back from 4 to 3.
I understand that, but what I was trying, if you can see in the meeting, in the packet, I like barely got out of the office this week to do any. And you can,
And let me ask you this, why is that?
because I'm writing regulations, I'm getting calls about other things, septic is starting to pick
Yeah,
up.
I think it should be in the morning. That you automatically do 2 or 3 every day. Because you can't I don't think we should hire somebody. We already changed it from 4 to 3. And then you said, well, let me see if I can work it.
Yeah, you gotta give it something.
Listen. 2 or 3 in a 2-week period is not satisfactory to them. I'm telling you that right now. And I'm not hiring somebody until we get at least a year into this process to see where we are. But I'm telling you, you can't do 2 or 3. You have to go out and do them. That's your main function. All this other stuff, we can wait on. But inspections, you can't.
Right.
Because if somebody comes up sick, it's gonna come back on us. Why didn't you do that inspection? And I'm not being harsh, I'm just telling you that we're paying you a lot of money.
No, I.
We want you to do the functions that we hired you for, and all this other stuff is secondary.
Yeah, we can like trade and go and other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really,
Sure.
everything else is secondary at this point. Inspections is the most important thing you do. You know, I understand you wanna go to school, you wanna get the classes, you wanna do these other things. You wanna research everything, but inspections is so important in this town. Because if we keep going this way, you're never gonna get to 3 on each business. 3 in 2 weeks is just not satisfactory. What do you think? Do you think you could do more in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
That last meeting, you showed us a list and it was what, 5 or 6?
9.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's where we want you to be. Now, if you're on vacation, yeah, you can't do them, but you can't just do 2 or 3 in 2 weeks. Phone calls can wait, listen,
And
they don't take that long, these inspections, they don't. 15, 20 minutes, you're in and out, you gotta do more. Does everybody else agree?
No, I agree.
All right,
I just
I
have,
don't wanna
I have
hire.
nothing to say. I'm not gonna.
No, no, I
excuse or
understand,
anything.
but I don't wanna hire somebody
Yeah,
if you,
no, I agree, I agree, I agree,
but I think it's important that we get these done.
I agree. On that,
I make a motion that we accept the Solomon VNA 670 for the February services.
So, one other quick thing on the livestock bylaw and regulation, we're all set now, right there.
yeah, that's all set. The bylaw's already in
Okay,
front of.
fine.
One of the problems, where's the sign sheet?
So, yeah.
So we can sign the VNA. I was a little confused on that, and that was my last thing that I wanted to bring up. Was the livestock.
The way it was written,
Put 10 chickens?
Well, there's no number now,
no,
so what's the,
So the reason why I got rid of the number in the bylaw is because the number is in the regulation. And the reason for that is that we have more control over the regulation, and in the regulation, there is a breakdown saying,
what you have to
okay,
do.
if you have 1/8 of an acre,
Right.
you are allowed 0 to 4 chickens. If you have 1/4 of an acre, you are allowed 4 to 6. If you have a half of it, and so it breaks it down.
so why don't we have that in the other?
Because the bylaw, we can't change that.
The bylaw is more, we don't really have control
It's
over it
very
because it's actually a zoning bylaw.
And
The
it's
definition of livestock
all animals.
raising
Right.
is covered by the zoning.
By so many acres is where you can have the animals, right? If I remember.
And so what the issue is that I was trying to find a way that we could rewrite our regulation so that it made more sense, so that we're not running into issues where, say, folks in Weathersfield on 10,000 square foot lots are legally allowed to keep 9 chickens.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But the way that the bylaw is written, that is okay.
Yeah.
And so by removing the number from the bylaw and putting it to the regulation and being able to. It's 6 one way, half dozen the other. I
The
either
only
put the
thing the
number.
bylaw really helped us on was got rid of that 6 months or older. Cause you can't tell an adult, 5 months, or even a year, some cases. You know, even in a dog, and we were having a problem with people violating the rules, you know. So when Dylan removed the number, I got confused a little, but I understand that now. It's back to our regulation. The key thing for the bylaw change for the town meeting was to remove those words. And town council did a nice job in it. I don't think anybody's gonna give us grief when I read that off.
Yeah, and I checked with town council and he was okay with that, because I explained to him what I just explained to you guys about how the numbers simply changed.
Are you still gonna go all those in favor? I'm for paying
Oh,
that
yeah.
bill.
Oh, yeah. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, same, so carried. Okay.
Thank you.
And then we get Earth Day, 2025, 20.
All right, so have we done the invoice for the Massachusetts
we are.
Environmental Health? I make a motion that we accept it, 360
Okay.
paid.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye,
Aye.
opposed, same, so carried.
I didn't realize that didn't make it.
I
I'm glad it was in the
did.
packet, but it didn't make
Well,
it
that
onto
was-
the docket.
Going there was there, the cost wasn't made. We did that the last meeting.
Oh,
that's all
yeah,
right. Don't
Yep.
worry about it.
yeah, I think, yeah, we are.
We did it the last meeting and that was my mistake. It wasn't put in there, so.
Was pointed, we just have to sign it.
No, it's, yeah, it's
Yeah.
all right. We figured it out. Today's the 18th.
Think it's-
No. You said the fourth gonna be a long meeting?
Well, because the
Well,
tobacco
the reason I'm
people.
saying, I get surgery on the fifth, depending on what time I gotta be at the hospital, will depend whether or not I'm even gonna show up then.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
You
I'll
can
let you know
zoom in
ahead of
then,
time.
zoom out.
I'm
Yeah,
home
we
next
can
Monday
send
with
those.
my schedule is.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nays, so carried.
All right.
In case you can sign while we're doing.
Have a good night, Laura.
Laura,
Good
thank
night.
you.
Thanks,
Oh,
Bob.
have a good one.
Good night. I'm
Yeah,
gonna try
good
your
night.
creatine.